What's up, everybody? Did you love seeing those baptisms? I sure did. That was so fun. And I don't know if you knew this, but just at the North Richland Hills campus during the whole COVID-19 situation since March, we've had I think we've had 11 baptisms. Isn't that incredible? I just love to hear that God is still moving and working among us. It's so good to see you guys. Good to see all of you online. I want to welcome Bonnie, Roger, Peggy, Jasmine. Thank you guys for being here with us today. I would love to know, and if you guys in the room want to join in as well, I would love to know what is the worst Father's Day gift you've ever received or given. I think that's always funny. You can throw your favorites in there as well. But I want to say happy Father's Day to all the dads in the room and watching online. Happy Father's Day to all of you. This is a special day, and we've got a special message for all of us today. But we're ending a series that we've been in called We Didn't See It Coming. And we really didn't see it coming. All of the stuff that has happened over the last few months, we didn't see it coming. But we have learned some things along the way. And so we've been discussing the things that we've learned and trying to dive in, press into what God is doing among us. We learned some things along the way. We learned that we don't need a building to be the church. I mean, we just talked about all the baptisms that have happened. That's kind of a lot of baptisms in a normal time, let alone in a time where we didn't have a building for a significant chunk of time to meet in. So we don't need a building to be the church. In fact, there were all sorts of new ways, innovative ways that we ministered to our community. We need each other more than we thought. We learned that. Do you remember the times where we were, and some of you are still in a place where you, because of health concerns and different reasons or needing to quarantine yourself, you're cut off, or we were cut off from society. We were sheltering in place. And we realized, man, human contact is really, really important. We need each other. We also learned change can be a good thing. There were some changes that were really tough and difficult, but change has led some of us to new and innovative places where God is speaking to us. God might be opening your eyes to some changes that needed to occur. Honestly, they've been there for a long time, but you never had the motivation, and this has motivated you. And that kind of leads to what we talked about last week. We will never be the same. And I asked some of you to make a commitment last Sunday to say, I will never be the same, Lord God. I'm not going back into pornography. I'm not going back into alcoholism. I'm not going back into a passive racist lifestyle. Whatever it was for you, that you said, I'm not going back to that, God. And if you missed any of these messages over the last few weeks, you can go back and listen to them on our YouTube channel. We post them on Facebook each week, and you can also watch them on our website, compass.church. But today, I want to continue and finalize this series on Father's Day by talking about some of the unsung heroes of this entire experience. There's been a lot of unsung heroes over the last couple months. Or maybe we have celebrated them more than we normally would. But the first thing that came to mind for me were the people who kept the grocery stores stocked. And, of course, the people who replenished and stocked back all the toilet paper. Can we just give an amen for whoever made that happen? I'm just kidding. It finally came back after weeks of being gone. But, yes, the essential workers that were out, keeping the stores open, keeping the the shelves stocked is what I meant to say there. Of course, we had a lot of heroes like our community groups. We had a lot of community groups that donated food that we were then able to distribute throughout the community. And I don't know if you saw some of the lines at food banks and things like that. Unsung heroes, that was incredible how many community groups were able to do that. I had a lot of teachers that were teaching kids on Zoom calls. That sounds impossible. I don't know how you teachers were able to do that. Way to go. You deserve a huge pat on the back. A lot of unsung heroes. And then especially, I was thinking about our medical workers. Because many of us, I've talked to a lot of people who say, I don't even know anybody who actually has COVID-19. But the medical workers are going into the hospitals and into the centers where those with the virus or with sickness are coming there to be treated. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to our medical workers. I don't know if you saw in the New York Times, they did a segment where they posted and updated almost daily. It was called In Harm's Way. And they just profiled people, medical workers, who were putting themselves in harm's way to take care of those who were sick. One was Joyce Lamb. Joyce Lamb is a medical surgical nurse in Queens, New York. And she talked about how patients could not have visitors. You think about being facing this really difficult virus and how it affects you and not having anybody that you know, no friends or family, able to come and comfort you. And so she would talk about going into the room with a patient, holding their hand, trying to fill their room with love. And I love, she said this. She said, "This pandemic has increased my compassion and strengthened my belief in humanity." Justin Sanborn was also profiled on that page. He is a physician's assistant in League City, Texas, and he works in a pediatric department, but it was converted into a COVID-19 emergency room at the start. And he said at the beginning, the numbers at times were staggering, people he was trying to take care of. This next picture really caught my attention. Amana Ramalho. You can see the marks on her face from her personal protective gear. She's a nurse in Brazil. And as bad as things got in some medical centers here in America, I think some other countries that didn't have access to some of the equipment they needed, it was even more so. She had to reuse masks and hours at a time. And she talks about how at the start of the pandemic, she called it a warlike situation. And she said because of her exposure to the COVID-19, she didn't want to pass it to friends and family. So at the time that this was posted, she had not hugged anybody that she knew or loved since March 12th. I just think that'd be really hard. And so there are moments like this and others that open up our eyes that I think over the last couple months, we have learned what a real hero is. We have learned what a real hero is. Jesus tells a timeless story about a hero that you may have heard before. It's in Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 30. Luke chapter 10, starting in verse 30. Jesus told this story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho. He's going from one city to the other city. Along the way, he was attacked by bandits. He's mugged in the street. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead right there beside the road. By chance, a priest came along. A priest. This is somebody who intercedes on behalf of the people, intercedes to God. This is a hero of the community, right? Surely he will stop and help this guy who is in need. But if you know the story, if you've heard it before, or if you haven't, you'll be surprised to hear, he doesn't stop and he doesn't help. It says when he saw the man lying there, he just crossed on the other side and passed right by. Doesn't tell us why, but I guess he had other things to do. Verse 32, a temple assistant walked over and looked at him lying there, but also passed by on the other side. I want you to remember a time where you saw somebody in need and you said, you know what? I got other stuff I got to do that's more important. That hits me hard because I think I have seen some things that I chose. My problem's more important than their problem. And this guy passes by on the other side. But then, here comes our hero of Jesus' story. A despised Samaritan came along. And he's the hero of Jesus' story. Why? Because when he saw the man, he felt, can y'all say that word? Compassion. He felt compassion for him. That's the start of a real hero. We've learned that real heroes are fueled by compassion. It's what motivates, it's what compels and pushes a hero forward. One of the doctors that was featured on that page that I mentioned earlier was ER Dr. Frank Gabrin, and he was in Manhattan where it definitely got the biggest surge of cases at that time. He describes how he had patients that died under his care, and at some point he himself was exposed to the virus, maybe because at that start he had to reuse personal protective equipment and masks, but he got the virus himself and started to fight off the symptoms. And even then, he was trying to encourage his colleagues because he and his colleagues were very discouraged. They didn't have a lot of tools at their disposal. How do we fight this thing? But he believed that the antidote to the burnout that he saw in himself and others was compassion. In fact, he emailed his colleagues. He said this is an exceptionally challenging time for all of us. With a limited number of tools to fight this virus, I would like to remind us that we have other tools at our disposal. He sent this email the night before he ended up dying from the disease. And he listed the other tools at our disposal: decency, empathy, and compassion. Compassion moves people, and it's what fuels real heroes. Jesus was often moved by compassion. Have you noticed this? If you've ever read the stories of Jesus, I think I counted like 12 times where Jesus felt or talked about feeling compassion. And you'll understand what I mean when I say feel compassion. When I tell you the word that is used at that time, we translate it compassion, but the word that is used in Greek there is the Greek word splachnitzomai. It kind of sounds nasty, doesn't it? It sounds like, dads, you know the sound that your kids make when they have too much ice cream? Splock. That's the sound of this word. In fact, this word is sort of an onomatopoeia, meaning that the sound of this word captures its meaning. You know what this word means? It means to be moved, churned up in your gut, in your bowels. Say, Luke, that's disgusting. I know. I just want you to understand kind of what they're getting at here, because for them to be churned up in your bowels, that was the seat of pity and love and empathy and caring about people that you could feel and say, that makes me sick. Interesting that the temple assistant that walked over and saw the guy laying on the side of the road beaten up, he did not feel it in his gut that he had to do something. Seeing a person in that condition did not make him sick. Have you ever seen something that when you saw it, you say, I can't turn away from this? There has to be something done about this situation. Have you ever seen something that was gut-churning compassion that it was inspired within you? I'd love to know any examples, if you're watching online, of a time where you saw or felt or experienced something that had been done to your kids. Have you ever found out that one of your kids was bullied? It just made you sick to your stomach and hated that your child felt that way. Have you ever felt gut-churning compassion inside of you? Say, I got to do something about that. I can't just let that go. When I was writing this message, all I could think about when I thought of gut-churning compassion, especially in light of all the events of recent weeks, was watching George Floyd be killed for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. I don't know how you could watch that video and not just be churned up inside and say, oh my goodness, how could this happen? How could this happen? Maybe you and I have felt gut-churning compassion whenever you see the numbers of abortions that happen every single year. And if you've ever watched information on how those abortions are done, it is terrifying. And it just makes you sick to your stomach when you hear about the stories. I had some really tough phone calls over the last few weeks, especially at the start of COVID-19, as a lot of businesses were shutting down and everybody was self-isolating, with people who lost their jobs. They're trying to figure out, how am I going to pay the bills? Am I going to pay my mortgage? Got a new baby and trying to take care of my family. Made me sick to my stomach, trying to figure out how can we help them so we can get them through this difficult time right now. And then have you heard about, because of everybody being at home and not going to school and not having access to food, some families, that domestic abuse just skyrocketed. And some of the things that I heard, sexual abuse to kids and things like that, it just made me sick. Did you know that even in normal times, 1 out of 3 girls will be sexually abused? Gut churning. Makes me sick. What is it that for you, when you see it, when you hear about it, you say, I have to do something. This cannot stay the same. Something has to be done. It just churns you up. I think when you think of it that way, it sort of changes what you think of when you think of compassion. Compassion isn't a Care Bear shooting friendship out of its belly. That's not what compassion is. Compassion is an inward stirring and churning inside of your stomach that stirs you to action. I have to do something. Something has to change. And I think this is such an important thing for us to talk about on Father's Day, because you know what I love? I love when a dad feels that something is wrong and notices and says, that can't stay this way. This makes me sick. Because you know that when a dad feels that way, they're not just going to sit around and do nothing about it. They're going to do something. So dads, I just want to encourage you today. The way that you can be a hero is to model compassion for your kids. Model compassion for your kids. When you see something that churns your stomach, can I just challenge you? I know this isn't necessarily the PC thing to say, but would you step into that situation and do something about it? Don't run and hide from it. Be courageous and step into something that turns you up. That is compassion. And your sons and your daughters need to see that from you. Say, hey, I didn't just escape from seeing this and go play on my phone or go watch Netflix. I didn't just escape from it. No, I looked at it, it churned me up, and I did something about it. I think that's a great dad. That's a great father. Notice that in Jesus' story, it says this despised Samaritan came along. When he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Jesus is doing something here in the story that you and I might miss in the year 2020, but 2,000 years ago, in Jesus' time and place and culture, Samaritans were a different race, different ethnicity, different culture, and they were, in the eyes of most Jewish people, the villain of the story. It's just the way it was. But Jesus liked to do this in his parables and in his stories. He would take the hero or the villain or what was right or what was wrong, and he would scramble it to make his listeners think. So he's got a priest, he's got a temple assistant, and you would think these are prestigious celebrities of their culture. Surely they are going to be the hero of the story, right? Wrong. It's the Samaritan. You say, but Samaritans are villains. And what I want you to see about Jesus' story, it's not who the Samaritan is that makes him the villain. It's what the Samaritan does that makes him the hero. And I love talking about that on Father's Day because I think dads get a bad rap in our culture. I mean, every commercial and movie, it feels like we're the punchline of the joke, just dumb beer drinking idiot. That's American dad is kind of how it's portrayed. And I just want dads, I want you to hear me say today, it's not who you are as a dad that just automatically makes you the villain of every single story. It can be what you do, I believe, that makes you the hero of the story. Because I think we've learned, especially over the last few months in tough times, we learned that heroes make sacrifices. And that's often the story that's celebrated about dads when they make sacrifices. And that's the story of the Good Samaritan. Notice that he goes over, verse 34 says, he goes over to the man that had been beat up and had been mobbed on the side of the road. This Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine, bandaged him up. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn where he took care of him. The next day, he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, telling him, take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time that I'm here. And I think that's a hero. Heroes do the hard work to make sacrifices, go out of your way. Yeah, it's an inconvenience. Yeah, it's a hassle sometimes. But that's what heroes do, I think. Are we just going to sit around and dads is like the extent of our battle, battling our golf score? We're going to share that with each other. Who cares at a certain point? I think what really matters, I want to hear the battles of how you're shepherding your kids. How are you loving your wife? How are you depending on the Holy Spirit? What are you learning from the teachings of Jesus? That's where the power is. That's a battle. Let's swap those battle stories together. And that's what great dads do. I think that's what makes you a hero. And I just want to encourage you today. Change the diapers. I've had so many diapers over the last few years. It's crazy. 2 diapers at a time because I have twins. All of the diapers. But do that to serve your wife. Take all of the kids to all the practices. Wear yourself out. Get down on the floor and roll the ball to your kids. Love and serve your wife even when you don't feel like it. And just wear yourself out. And you say, well, I don't want to do that. Well, I'm telling you, you want to be the hero? Then do that. Because you do that, your kids will tell those stories about you for the rest of your life. Heroic stories. My dad was a hero. He used to do this to me. He used to share. He used to play. You'll be the hero of your wife's stories for the rest of your life. And that's what we all really want as men. Can I just let y'all in on a secret? Just going to be honest. I just want to be respected, admired, and adored. Do you guys want that as dads? Can we just be real? That's kind of what we want. And if you will get down and wear yourself out, you will be the hero of the story. Every story. So, Back to the guy in Jesus' story, the Samaritan. He stops, feels the guy's pain in his stomach and his gut, and says, I got to do something, mends his wounds, bandages him, takes him to a place where he can rest up and heal, and then he pays his bills. That's the end of the story. And then Jesus says to the crowd, to those who were listening, and specifically to one guy that he was telling this story to, but there's others listening as well, he says, now which of these three would you say was a neighbor to the man who was attacked by the bandits? Was it the priest? Was it the temple assistant? The two that walked by on the other side and went by? Or was it the Samaritan? The man that had been directly listening to the story in the crowd said it was the one who showed him mercy. We're going to talk more about mercy here in just a moment. And I just want to point out, he doesn't say the Samaritan. He says, who was the hero? He doesn't say the Samaritan. He says, who was the hero? He says, the one who showed mercy. That's right. I just want to reemphasize, it's not who you are that makes you the villain. It's what you do that I think makes you the hero. Jesus said, yes, now go and do the same. So if you all want to be heroes, I think we've learned over the last few months that real heroes show mercy, which I think, by the way, is the most likely way for you to be godlike, for you to be mythical. I think all guys, we watch movies like 300, and we see the Spartans, and I just want to be these mythical warriors and things like that. We want to be godlike. I'm just telling you, your godlikeness is not in your ability to have godlike abs or a huge bank account or to catch the most fish or whatever it might be. The way that you can be most godlike, in my opinion, it's most likely for you to be godlike in your ability to show mercy. Your ability to show mercy. In fact, Exodus chapter 34, verse 6, God introduces himself. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but God says, I am Yahweh, the Lord. I am the God of compassion and, can y'all say that word? Mercy. I'm the God of mercy. I'm slow to anger and filled with unfailing love and faithfulness. I think mercy is the most godlike thing that you and I can do in our human capacity to show mercy. Mercy is when you have the power and the ability to do harm, but instead you choose to forgive in that moment. So dads, I just want to encourage you to be the hero. Model compassion for your kids like I talked about earlier, but also demonstrate mercy to your kids. Forgive them. Love them unconditionally. By the way, I'm preaching to myself as much as I am anybody else today. Forgive them. Love their mom. This is especially important when you're separated from their mom or in a divorced household. To love and to sacrifice, even when they don't deserve it, even when you're wronged, even when you don't feel like it. Show mercy, and you'll be the hero. You know, I heard about a guy named Rob Kenny who started a YouTube channel called Dad, How Do I? That's the name of his YouTube channel. And on his channel, he's making all of these videos with practical dadvice, is how he describes it. I don't know if you've seen this guy, but he teaches on the videos how to do everyday tasks and chores, fixing a clogged sink, checking the oil in your car, changing the tire, ironing a dress shirt, things like that. His very first video, How to Tie a Tie. It dropped on April 2nd and now has over 732,000 views the last time I checked it, which was about a week ago. So he's become sort of an internet sensation with all of his videos with this touching purpose. He wants to teach. He wants to teach young people how to do basic household tasks that he had to learn how to do on his own. Because you see, Rob's dad left him fatherless in his household when he was just a kid. It was a dark time for him. And so he decided that even though his dad wasn't compassionate, even though his dad didn't make sacrifices for him, even though his dad wasn't merciful, he decided that as a father of 2 adult children himself, he could change that trajectory in his family. And so he decided to take his acquired skills and his abilities to do some household things and to just put them out there on the internet in the hopes of making the world a better place, or at least a little bit easier to navigate, at least for maybe some other kids whose dads have left them. And I hear his story, and I really think Rob could have easily harbored his gut-wrenching anger towards his father and just kind of held that resentment inside of him, making him sick. But instead, he decided to channel and redirect those churning feelings towards empathy and compassion. And I think him making these videos and sacrificing time himself is sort of a demonstration of mercy. Rob even likes to toss in cheesy dad jokes into each of his videos. If you watch one, you'll hear them, like this one. Did you hear the rumor about the butter? Well, I'm not going to spread it. Sorry. You're welcome. Happy Father's Day to all of you guys. But maybe there will be somebody who went through what Rob went through, who will come across his videos and recognize not all dads are villains. Many are heroes. And even if you didn't have a good dad, you can still be one. So we've learned that heroes have compassion, they have sacrifice, they have mercy. That's a great dad. So I want to give all the dads a challenge, even the granddads a challenge today. There's a memory verse that I'd like for you to teach your kids and to memorize with your kids and to post a video of. It's Micah chapter 6, verse 8, and it captures everything that we talked about today so well. It says, this is what God requires of you, to do what is right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Captures everything that we talked about today of being a hero in the kingdom of God. I'd love for you to take a picture of this or write down the verse or screenshot it if you're watching online right now. And if you'll memorize that with your kids, with your son, with your daughter, with your grandkids, I think that would be so cool. And if you'll post that on Facebook, if you'll post that on YouTube, or if you'll post it on Instagram and tag Compass Church /NRH. If you'll do that, we'll pick a winner and we'll send you a pizza so you can do a pizza party with your kids, make you the hero. We're just trying to boost you up. We're so grateful for all the dads in our lives. Again, that's Micah chapter 6, verse 8, which says, this is what God requires of you, to do what is right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Would you pray with me today? Heavenly Father, thank you so much for what you do among us. You're transforming our hearts and our lives even now. And I pray, Lord, that when we come across someone who is in need, who's broken, helpless, dying, suffering, I pray that we would have the courage to step in that moment like the Samaritan. And that regardless of our past or regardless of our identity or the things that we've done wrong, in that moment, we would have a God opportunity to be the hero. God, I'm so thankful for the fathers in our church, in our lives, in our community. And I pray that we would continue to press into the very important role that we have to care for our families, our children, and for those that we're responsible for, Lord. Thank you for that opportunity and that responsibility. And I pray your blessing over dads today. It's in the name of Jesus that I pray.